Hey everyone, this is Jess Halloran from the Digital Experience Inbound Marketing team. I've been doing some research for our marketing navigation, doing tree testing using both Optimal Workshop and usertesting.com. And it's been going on for the last 2 weeks. So I just want to kind of share where we're at with that and how we might proceed. So issue 771 here is where you'll find all of the links to the things I'll be talking about today. So we've got, the tree test questions, the different iterations of the test that we performed, the user testing highlight reel, and my spreadsheet of kind of my explanation of how I got to where I got. My suggested navigation changes for like an MVC1 approach. Pretty much everything you will learn today. If you want to go into more detail, just come to this issue here, and I'll link it there with this video, and you can find whatever you need. So just a little primer on tree testing. Basically, we ask a question, something really simple like, if you wanted to learn what the cost of GitLab was, where would you find it? And we give them like a little spreadsheet of like all the little tabs in our navigation, and they can kind of like click through and figure out like, oh, we think that's in pricing, like something simple like that. So we try and do that so we kind of understand where people are at, how they view our navigation, where they would expect things to be versus where they actually are, if the copy is making sense or if it needs a little bit of a change. So I did 3 tests. I know it says 4 here, but that's just because I had one that I had to like redo. And basically with each test, we asked 12 questions, and you can see here, like the green is things that went really well. Most of the people answered it correctly. If it's fully red or like orangey, then that is something that did not go well. And again, that link to these optimal workshop iterations is in the ticket if you really want to like dig into it. So you can actually go in and go question by question. So this one is, suppose you heard GitLab has built-in CI/CD. Where would you go to see if that was true? And I played around with some things. So I did product features, CI/CD. And in that iteration, looks like 80% of people got it correct. Something else you can do is you can go to first click. And that will tell you like where people initially think it's going to be. So they don't see like the full blown out list. It's like condensed to just like, as you would see it online, like the top 5 or 6 things. And then once you open it, you can see everything else, et cetera, et cetera. So in this case, the first click for everybody was product. So that's a good sign. That means that's where it should probably live. Now, if the first click had been like resources or partners, then you think, oh, maybe that's where it should live instead. So this just gives us a little insight into like where people think it lives. And I'm going to go back to this one for a second. So something else you can do is you can click on the pie tree and it'll open up this, and you can like really see how people explored. So in this case, people were pretty direct. They went to product, and then I had added this thing called product features, and then they went right to CI/CD most of the time. Some people went a different direction. So like this person went down resources, services, implementation services. Someone went to explore GitLab. You can also see like how many people nominated the answer is correct. You can see how many people went there, but then didn't decide that that was correct. So it's just a good way to see. This was a pretty straightforward answer, but on some of them where they're not getting it correct, it can like spider all over the place. So what I did was, again, ask like 12 questions per test. And then if things were looking good, I kind of just nixed that question. And if it wasn't going well, I tried to like iterate on it and see if like maybe I can move this over here or change the copy and then run the same test again. So you can see that here with like data migration. It was something I asked, like if you wanted to learn about our data migration services, where would you go? This was an interesting one. So I'll try and explain my thought process on the spreadsheet here, but basically you have your correct answer. So in our current navigation, you would go to product and then GitLab professional services. Only 5% of people were able to actually find that. Most people originally clicked resources first, so that might tell you that's where that should live. And our second click was actually support. So the fact that it's in product is maybe the wrong place for it. I then created a hypothesis of like what is going wrong. So I think for sure we're like, it's the wrong place. Maybe it's also the wrong name. So we're going to iterate on that. So I did a second iteration where instead of calling it GitLab professional services, I just called it services. And then I actually added in the like 6 services that we have as new pages. That way, if somebody clicked on services, they could kind of see what was in there without actually having to go there. That actually had a 50% success. So it's still not great, but it's definitely better than 5. And then I tried the same thing actually with just changing the copy to professional services. And for some reason that did like even worse. So these things are kind of tricky to figure out. But based on like what we have right now, this seems like the best approach. And I did that with a bunch of different things. Sometimes it was just moving the thing. So let's see what we got here. Let's see if I can find a good example. Well, these are good examples of copy. So just like a slight tweak in the copy can actually make things a lot easier to find. So both for what we have now is Get Started and All Remote. When we asked about those things, had like a 45-40% findability rate. So people were finding it, but not all the time. Even if they saw it, they might not know what it means. And that's the benefit of having also the user testing videos, which I'll go into in a second. You can actually hear like what people are thinking, and they'll be like, oh, it's not that because of this. You know, like actually it is that, but for some reason they're not putting 2 and 2 together. So I made just some small copy changes. So like for Get Started, just changing it to Getting Started, went from 45 to 70% findability. Going from All Remote to Working Remotely went to 40 to 90%, which is like a huge increase. The best we got off of any test was 90%. So 90% is like an A plus basically. And I've just got a bunch of these out here. You can take a look and kind of see what they're about if you want to. I'm not going to go into everything right this second. I'm going to click to this tab now. And just based on everything I've looked at and listened to and highlighted, I've made some suggestions about what I think like an MVC1 approach to kind of moving and shifting things around within our navigation could be. And I'm just going to go through it one by one. So I have a little key at the top here. So kind of white is just keep as is. Purple is just moving it to a different slot. Yellow is just a copy change. Blue is moving it and doing a copy change. We have some net new pages. Some of them are already coming down the pipeline. Some are my suggestions, and I'll talk about those. And then red is like either just nix the page or combine it into another page. So pricing was actually our most successful question. So we'll just leave that right as is, perfect. One thing we did notice though is licensing and subscription, which does not currently have FAQ on it, but it definitely could. If you go to the page, it says FAQ. A lot of people thought the information that's under there would actually be in pricing. So I think grouping them together would be really helpful. Under our product tab, explore GitLab and install GitLab. Those are currently both top level navigation items. If we want to clean up our nav a little bit and have more space, I've tested both of these under product and they both performed very well. One thing I would note about Explore GitLab is that although when we asked specifically about Explore GitLab, people could find it, it was also the most wrongly or incorrectly answered question. So if anyone was just like unsure, they're like, oh, I think it's under Explore, like for like all different types of questions. So I think there's a little bit of confusion about what you would actually find there. So just something to consider. A lot of people did say they would expect like either a tutorial or a walkthrough of the product there. So something to keep in mind. Install GitLab did very well under product. And when people didn't choose install GitLab, they chose Git free trial, which I believe you can find the same things there. So we're not at a loss if we move it. Solutions. So just a little asterisk here because I had actually, this is a net new tab I'm suggesting. And when I had tested it, I had tested something called product features. And then I was informed afterwards that we actually call those solutions. So just a little bit of an asterisk. It performed really well under product features and hopefully it will perform just as well under solutions. But just moving these, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 items, instead of being just like a second level, it's kind of to a third level. So if you're looking for solutions, you'll know where to find them. So I have one called How GitLab Compares. So currently we have a page called Is GitLab Any Good? And people are a bit confused about what that is. And I think it's a little telling that if you actually go to that page, the first thing is explaining why it's called that. And I think it's fine to leave that on that page there, but if we're trying to get people to get to that page, they don't know or they don't understand the history of Is GitLab Any Good? then they might be confused. So just changing the copy to something like how GitLab compares did much better. I think it says 40 to 90% increased findability. So just again, just kind of, you only have like 3 words max usually to help people understand what is behind that page. So it's really important that the copy is understandable upfront. I also moved this under product because people were saying like, you're comparing your product. So it's more of a product thing versus a resource where I think it currently lives. Resources. Okay. So like I mentioned before, just changing get started to getting started for whatever reason worked much better. Changing GitLab professional services to simply services also performed much better. People also put those under resources rather than product. And this is my suggestion here, is to add these 6 links to the actual tab. That just gives a lot more explanation to what our services are, because right now it's just a little bit vague. Small business and enterprise are currently under product, and people mostly found those under resources. Enterprise was a really interesting one. People really struggled with it for some reason. I'm not 100% sure why. I even tried changing the question just to be like, am I asking it weirdly? And that didn't seem to help much. It helped a little bit, but yeah, that's a weird one. So I even tried like by team size, and it's actually did worse. So yeah, some of these things can be really surprising. I believe public sector is just a new page that's coming, so nothing I tested. Community, currently just says community. I tried a bunch of different things and had not a lot of success with it. This is one that people were very confused about what was actually behind it, and also got confused a lot with other things like caring for customers or like the blog or some other things. I talked with someone who works on the community team, and they had mentioned that in the footer, they actually changed it to community programs. So I'm going to suggest we do the same thing in the navigation. It didn't touch upcoming events. Blog, again, if we want to clean up the top level, I tested blog under resources. It performed very well. It's exactly where people would expect it to be. Our topics page right now is another one of those things that's a little bit unclear and didn't really test well in any iteration. One thing we could do is change the copy to industry topics and trends, which is what it is if you go to the page itself. Just to give it a little more insight about what it is. I would say in general, people were getting like the blog, topics, docs, and now we have this new page learn coming in. They kind of get them all confused. They can't tell one from the other. Docs being the only one that people kind of were like, oh, that's documentation. But otherwise, they were like a little confused about like the difference between all these different kind of resources. The 2020 developer survey was another interesting one. It actually performed extremely poorly. However, when I was watching the user testing videos, people were saying they would actually go find it and they'd be like, oh, I think it's this. And then they'd be like, oh, wait, no, that's where you would go to take a survey. And so I think if we just changed it to like 2020 developer survey results or like readout or something along those lines, so people know it's not where they take a survey, but where they find out the results of a survey, that could definitely help. I mentioned this before, but just changing all remote to work remotely, huge increase in findability. Customer case studies. I can't remember if that's under product or resources right now. When people find it, they know absolutely what it is, but people almost always went to partners to find it first. So my suggestion would be to put it under partners. We also have these 4 new pages coming. We're going to do a whole revamp with partners, so coming soon. Support. Contact support and support resources did pretty well. I would say sometimes there's confusion about which one is which, but I think they're fine as is. Caring for customers was a page that people were really confused about. It's a very small page right now, and I do wonder if there's a way that we can just kind of combine it maybe with support resources or contact support, because it doesn't seem to be, seems a little vague, I guess I'll say. Sign in and get free trial, they say. So those are my suggestions. And I'm going to play, oh, also if I've got the different navs that we tested here, just in case you're wondering. And then I'm going to play this for you. So this is just a highlight reel of, we did like 40 tests, I think, altogether, or something like that. So this is a 6-minute highlight reel of just things that kind of people pointed out, additionally to what we could see from the tree testing, just from like the data, and you might find it insightful. So I'll play it, and that'll be it. Here we go.
Support often has like FAQ along with like the documentation and help. So I think I would actually click on support, and then if support is incorrect, I'll pick up resources second, because that's where like documentation resources would likely to be. I would look for something about like about GitLab, about the company. So there's actually no about the company thing over here. So I'll take a look in support again. I picked support just because it seems like that's where I would find information about the company. And then so I go in here, and then there is caring for customers. That sounds like something related to like their diversity.
It might make more sense to me if getting started was the first one under there. Possibly support was at the very end, because if you go through all the options and you don't find what you want, you might want to go to support at the end. This order, like similar to the others, I think all the options are extremely accurate, but maybe their order could be a little easier if the most trafficked one was at the top. Just an No, that makes much more sense if we're looking to how they stack up, how they compare. Pretty organized there. If you wanted,
I'd probably click on Explore GitLab, because it'll probably explain how exactly to use GitLab and where you would find information for the first time.
Pricing, product, resources, partners, those all kind of lean towards like the front facing. Here is our product. This is why you want us. This is how free, like how inexpensive we are. The side.
The issue I was having, I was a little bit confused about product and resources for categories.
Some of the menu options were not self-explainable.
These three here, the professional services, small business, and enterprise, are more for businesses and what kind of services GitLab would be able to provide for a business.
Then I would think that maybe it's actually under here in community resources. So this is something that you can outline to how GitLab is bringing in different DI and belonging sponsorship. This one is a tricky one. I'm not entirely comfortable with this answer. Sign in and get free trial, like you haven't started using it, and that's like how I lean. So support is like you already have a product and you want to either ask for more help, or in this case, report a vulnerability.
I assume that resources is like anything that I need help with. Probably not resources though, because I feel like that would be more about how to actually use GitLab rather than about the culture.
actually no 2020 developer survey, to be honest, because I think the DevSecOps landscape should be covered under that. No, but then that's you going to be filling something out, or myself, sorry.
Maybe this all remote because it's all like work from home culture, or is it referring to a remote like branch of a repository?
If you wanted to know what payment methods GitLab accepts, where would I find that? Pricing. Right on the menu. It's got to be here.
Figure out like how GitLab is going based on other competitors' products. I'd probably go under product first because it's talking about other competitors' products. And then from there, I would click on how GitLab compares to figure out that information. What, if anything, could you change with the menu you just tested? Product and resources seem to be pretty similar wording wise. So was a bit confused on when to click each. What is portal? Does it say anything? Okay, portal's a little vague. I don't really know what that is.
And then resources/support. I think it's like resources are technically support.
Some headings potentially could have been a bit more broad. To be honest, I do think they were quite specific. Maybe if they then took you into different subheadings, into further detail, I think you need kind of something that jumps out at you straight away, and then you think, right, I'm going to go for that. And then it will take you into further detail, and then you'll find what you need to actually pick up on.
I got confused between product and resources, but eventually I realized that product is more about the features of GitLab versus resources is like if you need help with something. So I would rename the product category to something that explains that that category is more about GitLab's like technical features and functionality.
Okay, so that is the highlight reel. There's a lot of tests that we ran. So I just tried to get the like big picture ideas here. You guys have any questions? Feel free to put it in that issue again, which is 771. We'd love to hear from anybody if they have any other feedback to add. And that's it. All right. Let me just stop recording.